That's right. Another episode of The Boyd. Yes. Coming live from the studio in the shop in Duval County, Florida. Yes, indeed. That is right. Doing another Sunday Sesh. And today, as the title implies, I am talking a little bit about some propaganda that I saw recently. But it's pretty interesting in this time and day and age. What is happening? What is happening? You see the deplatforming of folks like Alex Jones and those kind of guys. And I mean, though I don't really go into crazy stuff as much as he does, I don't know. You know, there's some stuff that I think that he gets into that, hate to say it, man, there might be a grain of truth into some things that he's talking about, namely stuff like the globalists that are out there, and those kind of guys. But anyway, for those of you guys that are watching the YouTube archive, just want to let you know that this is broadcast via the internet. So whatever you want to call that in a virtual world, I guess, in the interweb, World Wide Web broadcast, pretty much weekly. I try to get a Sunday session in. Usually it's a little bit shorter, you know, but it depends on what we're talking about. So today I just saw some little video. It's like a 10-minute video, and I'm probably going to break it down a little bit. I'm not trying to get super analytical about it. I just want to look at it critically. There's actually a couple points in there I agree with, and that's the tricky thing about propaganda. A lot of times there's some truth trickled in there to root it into something that's observable to a large degree, but then there's an overarching premise that goes along with that, and not tonight, but later on, I think. So let me just say, for those of you OGs out there that actually have been tuning into the Boyd, looks like I think we have somebody. Well, we did for a moment, had somebody tuning in on YouTube. For those of you guys that have been tuning in for a while, what was I going to say? Man, I don't remember. Anyway, we do a live show. I've sort of don't put it up for, like, I haven't been putting it on a real good schedule. Part of it's because I don't know, like I haven't been bending my life to the schedule of another, like of a broadcast or something like that, in a long time. So, like, for instance, I like Sam Cedar in the Majority Report, right? There's a podcast, I guess, out there, YouTube channel out there. And you can call in live and you can do stuff like that. And it's cool to watch it live, but I don't like sort of turn my life around to tune in. And so I started wondering if that even matters. So some of you guys, if you've been following since the beginning, let me know what works best for you. Do you even like care if it's like actually like scheduled in advance? I sort of do them on Sundays, sort of do them on mainly Wednesdays at 10. But anyway, so today I wanted to talk about this this propaganda I saw. So let's just jump into it. I don't want to wait too long. So there's going to be an infinity screen for a brief moment. That's just me using this free stuff from out there in the world. So if you want to help me out with this show, you could always contribute to the Patreon, which can be found on the description in my YouTube channel. Okay, so anyway, here we go. Enough begging you for support. But anyway, as the show gets built up, I'll get better equipment and I won't have weird infinity screens. But let's take a look at the video. Hopefully it's not coming in too loud. Let me know if you can hear it.
When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." Yet most Americans today have been persuaded that our nation's governmental system is a democracy and not a republic. The difference between these two is essential in understanding Americanism and the American system. Before we discuss political systems, however, it's helpful to address the confusion that has been spread about the political spectrum. Many have been led to believe that the political spectrum places groups such as communists on the far left, fascists or dictators on the far right, and political moderates or centrists in the middle.
All right, look, I mean, we've got a setup here. Anyway, let's just keep going.
However, a more accurate political spectrum will show government having zero power on the far right to having 100% power on the far left. At the extreme right, there is no government. The extreme left features total government under such labels as communism, socialism, Nazism, fascism, princes, potentates, dictators, kings, any form of total.
See, and now this is where some of the propaganda gets sort of confusing and kooky, because, you know, they're telling you to downplay the people who supposedly are the, what do you call it? The experts, right? I guess academia, people, the professors, whoever, who are saying this or that. So saying fascism would be to the right, whereas communism, real communism, would be far to the left. And there's a conflation going on here that's really used. I don't know if it's like on purpose to deceive. That's the thing about the propaganda. It doesn't have to be true. It just has to feel right. You know what I mean? It just has to feel right. So we want to pin the government as an enemy, you know, and this is part of Chicago School, not necessarily Chicago Boy, but the Chicago School of Economics, neoliberal propaganda. I mean, that's what it is. I sound like some kind of like crazy hippie revolutionary, whatever, but I'm not trying to. I'm just saying it as it is, because that's what's really happening. That's what, you know, that's what's really happening. Remember, if communism, according to Marx, if you're really looking at it according to Marx, if you've read Marx, it's going to have a stateless society, you know, a stateless, classless society. And I would hardly say that anything that we've seen so far has been stateless. If anything, the state has been totalitarian and crazy. And classless, definitely, if you work for the state or some level in the politburos or different regions or whatever, then you had a lot of power. So anyway, you know, so there's definitely classes going on. And if you were a rich oligarch or something like that, of course you lived a different life than some peasant style farmer or something. So these things that existed aren't, I mean, and it sounds like the old trope, like, oh, communism has never really been tried. Well, if you look at the literal definition of communism through Marx, it would be a stateless, classless society where everyone would be working together. That didn't happen. So, I mean, yeah, you could say that on the way there, they took some bad turns. Sure. I mean, terrible turns. But if we look at the totality of neoliberalism, which is really what happened, you know, right around Reagan, Thatcher, they were really the champions of it. We've had it ever since, that basically there's a market solution for everything. Anything there is, prisons, you know, there's a market solution for that, as opposed to people coming together and saying, hey, how should we handle this social issue? Or, for instance, healthcare, there's a market solution for that. So we see now how the market has treated the American public, right? So there's also solutions to different things as well. We're also seeing the proposition of a market solution to war, as we see, what's his name? Prince, last name Prince, I think. What's his name? Former Blackwater guy, I believe. Is that him? I can't remember exactly. Anyway, I get these guys mixed up sometimes. And so Eric Prince, I think. Anyway, hold on. Let me flip back. Let's. Anyway, they want to privatize and market or use a market solution to war, which basically we're using a mercenary army to go and handle Afghanistan as a proposition that's being touted to Trump right now. And that's the thing. Would Trump say yes or no? Who's going to support that? Do the veterans support that? Do the current military folks that are, part of the military support that? Do the American people support that? I mean, if you really think about it as in terms of the American nation as what you really believe. So that's what I think the heart of this video is, to call to the yearning for the American nation, for that belonging to be part of this great nation, right? This dream of an amazing free nation. But there's some people that can score more by keeping it one way or another versus being a little bit better at sharing what they're doing, as opposed to extracting at full capacity, which their heroes like Adam Smith, for instance, warned them against. However, they never talk about that because Hayek and Milton Friedman were allowed to go sort of be on the road to psychopathy. That's really what they should have written about, instead of the road to serfdom. Also, that you walk the path to psychopathy on the other side if you don't watch out, right? If we watch out, we won't. We just have to be vigilant. That's why, what do we say? The price of freedom is eternal vigilance, right? Or price of liberty, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to get into the differences between freedom and liberty right now. But either way, price of liberty, eternal vigilance, vigilance over power, right? Power, including corporate power, including government power, right? And that's why this video gets this video gets into the weeds with the propaganda, because again, they're disrupting the definition of how we've chosen, and you could blame academia, you can blame who you want, how we've chosen to discuss a topic, how we've chosen to come up with words and ideas that sort of cement an idea or a concept in our mind that describes something. That's what words do. The color green is cemented in our mind as a concept by that word and that color association, right? So we know when someone says green, it makes different, it resonates with us in different ways. And it has a universal ability to do so. And so when we talk about fascism, when we talk about communism, socialism, if we're all talking about it in different definitions, then we can't communicate about it, which is great for the people who either want the status quo or want to create a disruption. And later, not now, I was going to say before, later, I think I want to compare this to propaganda that was spread during, before and during the wars of either the Civil War, World War I, World War II, on any side. Then look at how either the government or corporations or different people were using propaganda to motivate groups of people in one way or another. So this is another way, and some of you guys might see that there's Molan Lade Industries, obvious right-wing slant, obvious right-wing bias. There's some right-wing folks that I'm connected with, that I worked with in some, either the finance industry, or I've worked, or they're related to or friends with someone I've worked with in the finance industry or in the oil field, or anybody that might be right wing. I think a lot of them are sort of stubbornly still connected to me, because I'm stubbornly still connected to them, because I will still be open to seeing these things. In fact, I had to uncover this video, and I don't know why exactly Facebook decided to cover. There are some graphic images a little bit. The person who posted this decided to take the other route in saying that, oh, you must be covering it because you're scared of the truth. If you can't handle the truth, and something, yeah, blah, blah, some stuff. Anyway, they're succumbed to the propaganda. And not to say that I'm not going to succumb to some propaganda, but look, the whole point of the show is, so let's think about this propaganda. There's left-wing propaganda out there. There's right-wing propaganda. This one happened to be floating around. I thought it was pretty out of this world. Not out of this world, but it's like it's something that incites a fear, and it makes people feel like it's rooted in some level of academia and thought behind it, or historic validity. So anyway,
government.
Here we go. So total government.
Those who claim that Nazis
No
and
government.
fascists are right-wing never define their terms.
That's
This amounts to spreading confusion.
okay. See, and
Toward
now
the
he's
middle
saying
of the
same
political
thing.
spectrum can be
Right.
found the type of government limited to its proper role of protecting the rights of the people. That's where
Sure.
the Constitution of the United
We can
States
agree on
is.
it. We agree.
Those who advocate such a form of government are really constitutional moderates. So let's analyze the basic forms of government. They are monarchy or dictatorship ruled by one, oligarchy ruled by a few,
That's what we
democracy ruled by a majority,
got. Eh,
republic ruled by law, and anarchy, which is ruled by no one. In discussing these five, we'll see that they can be narrowed down to even fewer. Looking first at monarchy or dictatorship, this form of government doesn't really exist in the practical sense. It's always a group that puts one of its members up front. A king has his council of nobles or earls, and every dictator has his bureaucrats or commissars, the men behind the scenes. This isn't ruled by one, even though one person may be the visible leader. It's ruled by a group. So let's eliminate monarchy, dictatorship, because it never truly exists.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of have that
Oligarchy, which is
emerging
ruled by a
way,
group,
sort of in a
is the
way,
most common form of government in all history. And it is the most common.
Like sort of the supreme leader. Anything he does is their will, and they are okay with that. Or it's so 12D chess that they can't understand, neither can you. He's Jesus, so who are you to question? Like, I mean, seriously, some of these folks literally are like that. It sounds crazy. Sounds like I'm being facetious. Just watch some of these shows. Look at some of these comments. I'm telling you, these people, unless they're just like the ultimate trolls and they don't care about this world and they just want to get a laugh and they don't really believe what they're saying, which is, God, what is it like to live a complete lie and not really participate for real? Or they really believe it and it's like, wow, you really believe this shit. But anyway, right, because there's a concocted viewpoint, and we're going to be looking at it in a minute. But basically, so I believe this video is is showing us a viewpoint that would be bad. But I bet a lot of the people who spread this video also look at Trump, for instance, as like, okay, if we're going to have a dictator, let's have it be Trump. Right? Like, oh, if we're going to have a supreme leader, I mean, Trump's not bad, you got to admit. Right? That's where, I mean, like, we're going to have some conversations like that in the future. I'm pretty sure that's the way that's the way people are acting with Trump right now. I mean, he's a freaking imbecile. They can't admit that, like, man, I thought it would be different. I got totally shaken down. This is not right. I would feel for him. I'd be like, dude, I totally understand. I get it. Hillary is crooked. The DNC is crooked. I get it. I wouldn't want to be part of that either. I get it, right? And now if they're like, dude, okay, now what? I don't like the DNC. I don't like what's going on in the Democratic Party. I don't like this big, I don't know. There's all the identity politics part, these different things that are driving some people away. And I think on the left-hand side of the world, I guess you could call the left the part where together on the earth, not to poison it, not to kill each other, so that we are working for a common good, not for the common good, like literally that we're caring more about the sustainability of our nation and its people and the prosperity of life on earth and humanity within it. I mean, it sounds all like, if you know how to run a greenhouse, or if you've ever had an aquarium, it's like you have to, or had a freaking pool, you have to run a little system. And we think we're so smart. Then let's run the system. We can't keep shitting where we eat. We can't keep doing bad stuff like killing the ocean, blah, blah, blah. Let's stop doing it. It should make sense. It shouldn't be hard. But the monetary gluttony is what is overcoming society right now. And anyway, videos like this overshadow that, you know, and they cause
form of government today.
People don't know any better.
Most of the nations of the world are ruled
educated
by a powerful few, and therefore oligarchy remains.
Boom, that's us.
At the other end, we find anarchy, which means without government. Some people have looked over history and found that many of its worst crimes were committed by governments. So they decided that having no government might be a good idea. But this is a mistake, because as the ancient Greeks stated, without law, there can be no freedom.
So, I mean, look at this irony, right? Without law, there can be no freedom, right? Because somebody is going to, might makes right. We see this happening in different shows and different crap. If you're mighty, you get to call the shots. And we see that in real life, right? But we have to have a law so we can make sure that, you know, just like if you have an army, you don't just get to take over everybody's, you know, house and then, you know, rape their women or whatever. I don't know. Their women as if it's a possessive. But I mean, if you're doing that, then that's the way you would see women, I suppose. Whatever. I mean, let's just stick to the matter at hand. What?
Our founding fathers agreed and held that some amount of government is a necessary force in any civilized, orderly society.
Agreed.
In a state of anarchy, however, everyone has to guard life, liberty, and property, and the lives of family members. Everyone must be armed, and movement is severely restricted because one's property has to be protected at all times.
You know, bad. You anarcho-libertarian.
Civilized people have always hired someone to do the guarding, a sheriff, a police force, or some branch of government.
Oh my God! Look at
Once law enforcement was in place, the people were freer.
You think these guys are?
They could leave their property, work in the fields, and so on. In short, the proper amount of government makes every.
You know what's weird? I think there's an irony that a lot of the people that support this and the big capitalist system also romanticize the idea that these guys might be like, you know, roughing it out in the rough and tumble frontier. And in fact, I'm going to pause it here for a second. I want to make this point. Rough and tumble frontier, right? They're doing their thing. And they, oh man, my camera's stuck. Oh, please, what's going on here? Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, this idea, this notion, right? That they're out in the fields and whatever, and oh God, infinity screen. Out in the fields, whatever, and I'll just leave this up. Never mind. And trying to make a living, and everybody's going to sort of break into their abilities, right? Their ability to do this. I'm able to be the sheriff, and I'm good at doing this, and I'm good at building houses, and I'm good at making, you know, horses and whatever, right? And so like there's a romanticism to that, right? And everyone's just working together, and we work together, and nobody just shits on each other, and we all just like get along to try to rough it against the world, right? And then, but they never talk about the guy that comes in and like buys everybody's horse off of them because he tricks them into some kind of fool's scam, right? And then he rents the horses back out to them, and then eventually finds other people to use the horses cheaper. And then next thing you know, now these guys have no horses, and they're just basically destitute, trying to work for the dude that has all the horses and then buys all the land. And now they're sort of stuck trying to play Monopoly, and the whole board's already won out, and they already got houses on them and hotels and junk, right? And then it's like, okay, yeah, you could win if you could find a way to weasel your way into winning that, right? Now, of course, that it doesn't have to be that way. You could figure out your own enterprise and so theoretically do something. But, you know, capital requirements, we start thinking about that. And then we also think about, you know, how amazing is the capitalist dream as you step out of the cruise ship into some Jamaican harbor, and all the kids are trying to sell you trinkets out of their own personal business. I mean, if that's how you want to envision the future of the rest of the whole world, like that, everyone, an entrepreneur, everybody trying to sell their wares. You know, we never thought about efficient market theory. No, let's just all try to open some kind of business, doing some kind of thing, and all try to go do that. Like we never thought about doing that ever before. That there aren't restrictions, right, to that, and maybe there are some unfair restrictions where the government overshoots their authority, and that's what this video is going to talk about. And I agree that that exists, but to also make up some shit, like let's just whatever.
Everyone freer.
Anyway, do you get the irony that, let's go back to this, like with frontier people, they're out here fighting against the elements altogether, and everyone's like, hey, I'm good at making axes. Well, I'm good at chopping wood. Well, I'm good at burning wood. Well, I'm good at, having wood. And it's like, oh, okay, well, let's all go do our things that we're good at, right? And it's not about like cornering a market or doing some shit like that. And there's like something romantic about that. And I think people are like, yeah, that's the American frontier. That's how it was won. And it was like that. There was a cooperative effort of people involved. In fact, it was very communal, almost communist in the way it worked. And then the money changers come in, and then the politicians come in, and then people start, wrangling around the land and how it works and who owns what and who gets what rights and by what force. And can you have a group of people that work in your benefit if the politicians take over the police, for instance, and they tell the police to run you off your own land? Could they do that? Have they done that? And they have. We've seen cases, and I don't have any listed, but I know that there are cases out there throughout the United States history where property has been seized from private citizens by the government, and probably plenty of that. And I'm sure you've even seen Sons of Anarchy and things like that, where they even have art imitating life, where they've got crooked tycoon getting involved with the crooked politician to run a person off their land using eminent domain and put a development there or something like that. So basically the capitalist puts their weaselly hands into the development of the government, that vilifies the government for government's failure, even though they bought out the government, because that way there's also the idea of trying to actually privatize the government itself to try to make it a money generating entity, as if that would make it better and more efficient. It doesn't make sense, because the profit, think about this, the profit that's lining the profiteer's pocket is built in. It is a built-in inefficiency. You might as well pay the workers better, get better workers, maybe do the, or you might as well, what is the driving force for the profiteer capitalist? It is profit. Is it results? No. Is it jobs? No. Right? Is it to actually get something done? No. In fact, if anything, to continually have some obsolescence and need for your help is even better. So it is working in contradiction to the needs of things that are tied to the government, yet we constantly get grifted by capitalist entities, right? Doesn't mean you can't have a guy that's good at making wagon wheels and another guy that's better at making wagon wheels, and they compete, and the better wagon wheel guy wins, and this shitty wagon wheel guy has to sell his shit for less. That's normal. That's great. But when the big wagon wheel guy starts manipulating politics to where he gets to have exclusive rights to all of the pine in a certain valley, and then the little guys are all fucking forced out, and now they have to go become employees of the first dude, that's when fucking shit gets out of hand. That's where that's capitalism I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about free market shit. I'm talking about the capitalism shit that we're talking about. Okay, where you can manipulate you can manipulate a society, or you can manipulate the market itself. And in fact, you can manipulate and create your own, as we have right now. We're lobbyists and people that are basically representatives of the capitalist class, because they're not the communist class. They're not socialist class. Who are they? Right? Who are these lobbyists representing that are they actually write the laws sometimes, like these guys would write the law that our representatives would simply sign into law because it suits their interests. So they might do some kind of fake gun reform or some other kind of gun deregulation that might be written by Molan Lave Industries or whoever. I'm not saying they have lobbyists per se. I'm just saying that this is what we're talking about. You know, NRA for sure has lobbyists. These guys probably do. I don't doubt it. Anyway, let's see what else is going on.
There are some who advocate anarchy, however, not because they want no government, but because they don't like what they have. They use anarchy as a tool for revolutionary change. The condition of anarchy is very much like a vacuum where something rushes in to fill it. These calculating anarchists work to break down the existing government with rioting, killing, looting, and terrorism. Tragically, the people living in such chaos often go to those best able to put an end to it and beg them to take over and restore order.
Some of this might be why.
And who is best able to put an end to the chaos? The very people who started it. The anarchists who created the problem then create a government run by them, an oligarchy, where they have total power. This is exactly what happened in Russia that led to Lenin taking total power, and in Germany, where Hitler's brown shirts created the chaos that brought him to power. But anarchy isn't a stable form of government. It's a quick transition from something that exists to something desired by the power-hungry. It's a temporary condition, and because it isn't permanent, we eliminate it as well. The word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratein, meaning to rule. Democracy, therefore, means the rule of the people, majority rule. This, of course, sounds good, but suppose the majority decides to take away one's home, or business, or children. Obviously, there has to be a limit. The flaw in democracy is that the majority isn't restrained. If more than half the people can be persuaded to want something in a democracy, they rule. What about republic?
How did that work?
Well, that comes from the Latin, res meaning thing, and publica meaning public. It means the public thing, the law. A true republic is one where the government is limited by law, leaving the people alone.
Don't let it get too high.
America's founders had a clean slate to write on. They could have set up an oligarchy. In fact, there were some who wanted George Washington to be their king. But the founding fathers knew history, and they chose to give us the rule of law in a republic, not the rule of a majority in a democracy. Why? Let's demonstrate the difference in the setting of the Old West. Consider a lynch mob in a democracy. 35 horseback riders chase one lone gunman. They catch him, and they vote 35-1 to hang him. Democracy has triumphed, and there's one less gunman to contend with. Now consider the same scenario in a republic. The 35 horseback riders catch the gunman and vote 35-1 to hang him, but the sheriff arrives, and he says, "You can't kill him. He's got his right to a fair trial." So they take the gunman back to town. A jury of his peers is selected, and they hear the evidence and the defense, and they decide if he shall hang. Does the jury even decide by majority rule? No, it has to be unanimous or he goes free. The rights of the gunman aren't subject to majority rule, but to the law. This is the essence of a republic.
Indeed.
Many Americans would be surprised to learn that the word democracy does not appear in the Declaration of Independence or the U.S. Constitution, nor does it appear in any of the constitutions of the 50 states. The founders did everything they could to keep us from having a democracy. James Madison, rightly known as the father of the Constitution, wrote in...
So what is the premise behind this video? Why are they railing so hard against a major social movement? Right? It also doesn't say capitalism anywhere in the Constitution either.
Essay number 10 of the Federalist Papers. Democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the right.
He also thinks, you guys can read this in here. He also thinks and believes in the opulent minority ruling over the idiots. Do you believe in that? Do you think that is the case? If you believe that, I mean, then you go along with Madison. Sure, you got support there, and most of those guys. I think Thomas Jefferson was supposed to be a real advocate for democracy, but pretty much no one else.
Rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. Alexander Hamilton agreed, and he stated, "We are a republican government. Real liberty is never found in despotism or in the extremes of democracy." Samuel Adams, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, stated, "Democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself." The founders had good reason to look upon democracy with contempt, because they knew that the democracies in the early Greek city-states produced some of the wildest excesses of government imaginable. In every case, they ended up with mob rule, then anarchy, and finally tyranny under an oligarchy. During that period in Greece, there was a man named Solon who urged creation of a fixed body of law not subject to majority whims. But where the Greeks never adopted Solon's wise counsel, the Romans did. Based on what they knew of Solon's laws, they created the 12 tables of the Roman law and, in effect, built a republic that limited government power and left the people alone. Since government was limited, the people were free to produce, with the understanding that they could keep the fruits of their labor. In time, Rome became wealthy and the envy of the world. In the midst of plenty, however, the Roman people forgot what freedom entailed. They forgot that the essence of freedom is the proper limitation of government. When government power grows, people freedom recedes. Once the Romans dropped their guard, power-seeking politicians began to exceed the powers granted them in the Roman Constitution. Some learned that they could elect politicians who would use government power to take property from some and give it to others. Agriculture subsidies were introduced, followed by housing and welfare programs. Inevitably, taxes rose and controls over the private sector were imposed. Soon, a number of Rome's producers could no longer make ends meet, and they went on the dole. Productivity declined, shortages developed, and mobs began roaming the streets, demanding bread and circuses from the government. Many were induced to trade freedom for security. Eventually, the whole system came crashing down. They went from a republic to a democracy and ended up with an oligarchy under a progression of the Caesars.
Look, Roman history is very complex. I'm not a Roman historian, okay? So let's even take some of this with some salt, but also let's just sort of go with it. Obviously this is biased to only looking at the excesses of government, and I don't disagree with that at all. Again, what do we always say here on the Boyd? That, right, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. You have to look at government overreach. Like right now, we're already through a period now where government has overreached, overstepped. We've lost Fourth Amendment rights to privacy. We've lost other Fourth Amendment rights to seizure, against seizure of even ourselves, or other rights as far as whether or not the military can work against us. People like Alex Jones could be labeled a threat to national security and disappear using use with the military, or even these guys. These guys could be labeled at some point. These Molon Lave people and the right-wing people who spread it could be labeled as a terrorist against or a group, because they really are a minority. This sort of hardcore right-wing people are a minority in the United States, but they're probably in the 30% range. You know what I'm saying? And so what if they get viewed as an enemy of the state by the other chunk who ends up getting sort of in power? And simply gets in power of the FBI and the whole apparatus therein, right? And then what? So I see where the intent of this video is going, because obviously there's some bias to it, but instead of telling the truth, which has some of this that also resonates with what's going on, there is a clear, disingenuous tint to it, because they fail to tell you about the problems with laissez-faire capitalism, with laissez-faire markets where you can have monopolies that emerge, where you can have those same monopolies and accumulations of capital forming oligarchies within themselves, power structures within themselves that manipulate the politicians within themselves, that are also able to manipulate the politicians and the economy and the society to bend to their whims. So they forget that part, right? So it's almost like who are they working for? Are they working for the people, or are they working for a group of capitalists who want to become the oligarchy again? So that way, because they've already gone into extraction mode, they're going to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze until there's a revolution. Why not? Because they can. They can. They can. The more they'll get more money. These few that are in power, it's a scramble to get in power now before there's a revolution, because there's going to be a massive crash. And then when that crash happens, somebody's going to do something crazy, and some crazy people like Oath Keepers or somebody's going to do some other crazy shit. Next thing you know, it's going to be crazy shit, right? And stuff like this video is going to entrench the people who spread videos like this, who don't really know any better, who don't really critically think much, because I mean, that's not really what a lot of us do, unless we sort of really are trying. Most of us don't try to do that because it's work, and nobody wants to sit there and do work. They'd rather just watch something and be like, oh yeah, that's right, these idiot lefties, yeah, this resonates with me because it makes me feel good, it hits me in my tingly spot, and I'm like, yeah, fucking lefties. It's just like somebody watching an Obama, like, you know, like Obama, like win montage, and like, oh, I just so miss the presidency. He's just, I mean, the old president, he was just so amazing. And like, well, you know, he's the one that signed the National Defense Authorization Act into law that allows the military to come seize you. He, you know, kept escalating the drone war. He also did some things out, you know, with Syria, you know, things that are coming to light in the Middle East that we didn't really need to be, still didn't need to be involved in. We don't need to be involved in that shit. But yo, he still got the Peace Prize, and he still was involved in that shit. You know, he's just as much part of the neoliberal machine as anybody else that's being elected, including Trump. All of them are part of it, and there's a lot of supporters, and these guys are latched onto it, right? And so there's a lot of contradictions, but they'll gladly just throw this kind of propaganda around and share it around. Also, by the way, the person that was shared and linked in this with this video, also, I'm pretty sure it is a fake propaganda bot website. It's like some dude with a profile, and he does have pictures, but there's a lot of people asking, why is everything linked with you in it? It's weird. I don't know. It's sort of weird. Facts, they matter, right? Oh God, see, and it gives you the setup, and this is where they get you to know which part of the tingle spot they're trying to get you with this video. The short video shows how wrong the leftists, Marxists, Antifa, Nazis, communists, and your dipshit college professors are.
Thus, democracy itself is not a stable form of government. Instead, it is the gradual transition from limited government to the unlimited rule of an oligarchy. Knowing this, we as Americans are ultimately left with only two choices. We can keep our republic, as Franklin put it, or we will inevitably end up with an oligarchy, a tyranny of the elite.
I agree. And what's happening right now. Okay, so that was the video. And like I said, I really believe we're already there, is the thing. Infinity screen. All right, here we go. That's what I'm saying. Is I think we are already living in an oligarchy. A lot, in large part, it's part of the. You know, it's they've hijacked the government. Who really trusts the government, right? Come on, nobody trusts the government. Anyway, put some comments in if you end up watching the video. Tell me what you think. It really, you know, guides the the content and the direction of the video. But thanks for all those that did end up joining. I don't think anyone's watching right now on the live video, but if you're watching the archive, again, put in a comment. I do go back and try to address some of those comments later on. And things are going to be sort of crazy here at the Boyd. Just a lot of stuff been going on, and just tons of time being taken up, but and a lot of changes. So shop studio right now, but there's going to be potential location change here here in a little bit. Not even potential, it's going to be happening. So stay tuned. I will, obviously there'll be some continuing videos, but there might be some points where the Boyd goes into hiatus. Tell me what you think about the breakdown of that video. Like I said, I do agree with some things here. We do have to be vigilant over corporate, over the government and the government rule. I believe that we need to really think about. We really need to think about what we can do to make sure that our government can't be so easily hijacked by certain people that have money right now. Stuff like Citizens United, which allows the speech of dollars to be represented by political campaigns and things like that. It's just because we got to remember these campaigns and these efforts, even things like Turning Points USA, people like Ben Shapiro, David Rubin, they receive money from these interests to push a certain agenda. People like Molan Labe, they get they get incentivized by or paid by these folks and they get support. You see their labels, you see them paying for their event space, things like that. They even talk about who's paying them for whatever event, and when things happen, they go wherever the money sniffs out. Again, we're looking at a world of charlatans. My whole aim here is to just speak about this honestly. Some of you guys might be like all pissed off as far as my take on things. Again, it's not because I feel one way or another as far as left or right, or like the conservatives are one way or another, or left-wing people are one way or another. I think that a caricature has been created in everyone's mind of who the other, quote unquote, whoever that is, and we've entrenched ourselves tribally. So I think we're ready. At some point, there's enough pressure now to say, like, what is a different option, an option that covers like the concerns of everybody, right? We definitely need to work on the economy, but how can we do that? Maybe there's more isolationist principles that can get people together to say, what can we work on? Let's figure out a way to make it in this world together, instead of we're all little islands trying to figure out how we're going to just pay rent. There's got to be ways for communities to come together and create ways to either the community or the government or even private citizens, if charity's so good and libertarians are right, and that rich people will give charities that don't give charity that doesn't have a catch to it, doesn't have a hook to it, doesn't have a profit motive to it. If they were able to do that in real life, then we would see the ability to create sustainable programs to help people. I have some ideas that could take some pressure off of needed resources like food, shelter, healthcare, that would in the long term bring pressure down from the system, and it would be paid for by and large by taxes. And guess what? People would still not only would people in the nation live probably the best lives of all the people in the world, we could do it in an amazing way that's good for the world, good for the environment, good for sustainability, good for nature. We could do those things and actually lead in that path, and be sustainable. Now, it might not give us the maximum GDP per the world stage. But again, I think there should be an isolation policy that where it says it doesn't matter, even though the globalists want us to believe that it does matter. At the end of the day, if people want to, if they want to be, if they want to flight to safety out of the United States somewhere else, then that means they have underestimated what the United States can do and what the United States population, the American people, are capable of doing. So if you want to take your money and go take it somewhere else, go for it. Go do that stuff somewhere else. But if you want to tap into the American population and use the American population to extract your wealth by using the American population's health and ability to create labor and or buying power, then you will have to pay taxes. And the taxes don't even have to be exorbitant. I think there are ways that we can create programs that don't cost a whole lot of money, that can be paid for by taxes that are paid for by entities that are working within the economy. And the more that you do, the bigger that your footprint is within the economy, the more your taxes are. And it's going to be like this progressive thing. It's going to be like, it's almost going to be like, what is it? Like a tractor pull. You know, it's going to be to the point where it gets harder and harder as you go, but you can still keep fighting and fighting and fighting. It's going to get hard, and then eventually, yeah, maybe you would stop. And what would that do? Maybe we have to come up with a way to make it so that, look, you've created something that bursts into becoming a needed thing that becomes part of the national structure. Like, I almost believe that there should be some form of communications platform akin to YouTube or Facebook that becomes to some degree utility, because it gives a free speech platform that rivals what corporations are able to do, and because the commons areas are smaller and smaller. Right. So that though only a few people may be watching this at any time, and this is the perfect way. I mean, it's a market choice. If people don't want to see this, don't want to share this, then it stays in its own little vacuum. If it ever gets shared, if it ever blows up, then a lot of people can see it and it'll craft the way, or at least influence a little bit the way people think, and gives a trajectory of where their path might be. Just because it might open up a critical thought. At least that's the idea behind the Boyd. Give me your thoughts. Let's see, nothing on, we didn't get anything on YouTube, nothing on Facebook. Again, thank you all for joining in and checking out the show. Like I said, Wednesdays and Sundays, so the next one is going to be a Wednesday. Send me an email, or drop a comment, or communicate with me in some way if there's something on your mind. If you see some propaganda, left wing or right wing, send it my way. Let's break it down. Let's talk about it critically. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that I missed in that propaganda video, but it was already taking a long time. And here we are, 52 minutes in. I'm not trying to get too crazy on it, but I do want you to think about the things that are around you. What's the bias that it's coming from? And is it true? If we look at it on two sides of the coin, two extremes, when we look at no government intervention, meaning no EPA, no regulations as to what if we had no regulations, no government interference into stuff like farming, like what's happening now with Florida with all the animals dying and stuff in the ocean. It's like crazy stuff. So obviously we can't have zero government, but we also can't have crazy government either. So I would almost propose that we have some kind of structure where because we have a republic, it becomes so easy to be bought, as opposed to democracy, where you have to somehow buy the majority, which can happen. But the republic puts it in the hands of fewer people, and as we can see, they can get bought. We see it happening now, right? So let's talk about it as a nation. We've got to come up with a new solution. I wonder if there should be a lottery of people in a fourth branch of government, which is the people's court, basically, or some kind of people's group, where it's a random lottery of people that have a certain criteria, and we could talk about what that criteria is. And those people, because they would have such a hard time being bought, they could be, to some degree, they could be a channel for disseminating what is right or wrong, as far as not right or wrong, but what is news. If it's information or not information, who are these people? I don't know. We could talk about those kinds of things. It would be a way to find the most impartial, unabridged, unadulterated viewpoint that we could. You know what I mean? Without somebody manipulating them, hopefully. We could talk about some of these solutions, but I think that might be one way we could look at it. Anyway, this is another episode of The Boyd. Please like, share, all that stuff. Also, Patreon is on the about. Also, there's a PayPal account. If you want to see better stuff, better quality, better lighting, better everything, whatever. If there's anything else that you have, any requests that you want, let me know. I'm trying to make the vlog more entertaining, and also want to make it I want to cast a wide net, try to get a lot of people involved, get a real sense of where America's going as far as societal feelings, as far as what we feel like philosophically as a society, and what is the kind of society that we want to live in. Those things I think are important to me. They should be important to you too, I would hope. So I'm going to end this video. And so, as always, we have Sep Rock Beats with the music tonight. And here we go. Looks like. Anyway, remember, like, subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and we have so you can check YouTube, and I hope y'all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in to The Boyd. Play a bomb,